Okay, hi guys. So we're gonna start this session if that's okay with you all. So please have a seat with your ALT JTE pairs, and please make sure that you have at least one other pair of people to talk to. We will have about 15 to 20 minutes of discussion during this session. Awesome. So, yay! Today's topic is called Comprehensible Input. This is a topic I'm super passionate about, so I hope that after today's 50-minute period, you will hopefully have some understanding of what it is, why it's essential in your classes, and hopefully how to find resources for it. Great. So this is today's agenda. I'll do a quick self-introduction. We'll talk about the what and the why, what makes good comprehensible input, a case study, and if we have time, a Q&A. So, who am I? I don't think, well, I know maybe half of you in here. My name is Claire McGilvery. I'm a fifth-year ALT, originally from Toronto, Canada, and I actually have a degree in TESOL, and TEFL education from a university in Canada. Prior to coming on the JET program, I taught ESL in Canada, so being an ALT is not my first ESL experience. However, I'm not an expert, I'm not a researcher, I'm just using other people's research to hopefully broaden your own minds. So, if after this session you have questions, I really encourage you to do more research of your own and find things that interest you in the second language acquisition space. Awesome. So, the what and the why of comprehensible input. I'm going to continually say comprehensible input as CI. It's annoying to say comprehensible input every single time. So, please remember that. The first thing that we kind of have to think about is, why do people learn languages, right? We learn languages for a variety of reasons, because we want to get a job, we have educational opportunities, we're moving abroad, and we want to make new friends. But at the end of the day, our goal is to communicate with people, right? Communication is our goal. And so, for us as teachers, what does that make our goal in the classroom? What should we be aiming for? Well, I would argue the goal of our lessons is to help our students become effective communicators in English. This does not mean perfect communicators. They are going to make mistakes. It's natural. But we want them to be able to have a message and make it known to other people. That's our ultimate goal. So, how do we do that? For a really long time, this is what people have thought is the best practice, right? I'm sure many of you have done language learning like this. I learn grammar and vocabulary. I practice it again and again. I review it again and again. Boom, I'm fluent. No, right? We all know that this doesn't work. What this method ends up doing is our students can accurately understand grammar. They can point out in the sentence what's wrong, but they don't actually become fluent in the language, which means they can't properly communicate, right? It's not the best way to become fluent. That's our goal, communication. So, how do we actually become fluent? Comprehensible input, that's this. So, for 3 minutes, with the people just seated around you, no specific groups, I'd love for you to discuss these things. So one, what is comprehensible? What does input mean? And what is comprehensible input in language? Just brainstorm a little bit. Go ahead, 3 minutes. Okay, welcome back everyone. Thank you very much for brainstorming. I hope you were able to come across some stuff. Got it. Okay, so for the purposes of this presentation, we will define comprehensible very simply, something that is able to be understood by our learners, right? It's exactly the meaning. What is input? Well, it's reading, listening, and watching, things that we receive when we are learning a language, okay? This is what input is. So, what is comprehensible input? Do you think it's just as simple as a book or a movie that I can understand? No, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Basically, it is language that is just a little above a student's level of understanding, but that can be understood with context. So things like stories, gestures, props, realia, expressions, all of these things. We're not actually aiming to be perfectly at level with our kids. We want to be a little bit above that. So they can understand it, but they need a little help. And it does take a little bit of finding a balance, right? Wherever our current level of our learners are, we want to be going just above that. So it's a little challenging, but we don't want them to be discouraged. When it's too difficult, they feel downtrodden, overwhelmed, they're going to tune out immediately. So the key number here is 95%. They should be able to get about 95% of a text, of a skit, of a movie, relatively easily. Seems simple, but it's actually a lot more difficult than you think. So, some examples of good CI. Books, videos, speech, skits, music, newspapers. These are all good comprehensible input. You will notice a big thing missing on this list. Textbooks is not here. Textbooks are not comprehensible input, okay? I'm going to tell you my own personal opinion here. I hate textbooks, get them out, okay? Grammar is important, we have to learn it, but learning from textbooks just doesn't create fluency in our kids. It creates monitors. All they do is focus on if my grammar is correct. Am I using this word correctly? They're not focused on the message. We instead want to use this, communicative things, where they can be focusing on the message. So, like I just said, focus on message, not on form, okay? When I'm reading a book, I'm not focusing on what exact grammar structures or vocabulary is being used. I'm just trying to understand the message that is being communicated to me. Communication. And we're not consciously learning these rules, right? We're acquiring language through reading and listening. It's an unconscious process. An unconscious process, what does it do? It mimics natural learning process of a language, right? When you learn your first language, whatever it may be, you are not being taught the grammar rules. No one of your parents is telling you, you must use be doshi in front of ing every time, right? None of our parents do that. We learn it through picking it up by watching media, reading, listening to people talk around us. That's our goal in the language classroom as well. That's how we create communicators. Which again, like I said before, leads to fluency and an intuitive understanding of a language. We're not monitoring everything we say, we're actually communicating. So, we need to move beyond this current practice towards something that looks a little bit more like this, okay? We want comprehensible input, these real-life situations that are communicative in some way, to be the basis of our lessons. And they should be supported, of course, by grammar and vocabulary study. We need it. It is a necessary part of language. We need to be practicing and reviewing. And of course, we should be doing conversation and output. You can't communicate without actually speaking or writing. But comprehensible input is the main source of our language learning. This is the hope for the future. A little bit of evidence for you guys. So hundreds, and I mean over 500 published papers have shown that comprehensible input is not only useful, but necessary to learning a new language. It is not possible to become fluent, to become communicative in a new language simply by learning grammar. It's just not. And this is true of not only English, but all languages across cultures. From a recent study here in Japan, in Hyogo Prefecture, 70 hours of comprehensible input was equal to 286 hours of traditional learning. That means grammar study, translation, this kind of thing. How much more effective is learning from real-life sources, from this comprehensible input, just a little above our kids' levels, than traditional learning? Why are we wasting their time when they could be so much better, so much faster? A few more reasons to use CI in your classrooms. Gives learners a lot of context when studying. When we use just a textbook, we're just getting a single page of information, a single dialogue, a single skip. There's not a lot of context. But when I'm watching a movie, I have hours of context to rely on. When I'm reading a book, I have pages. News stories, I'm relying on my real-world information, things that I know. It reduces stress and anxiety. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later, so just for now, take me at my word. Again, building that intuitive, natural understanding of language, right? And it leads to better and more natural communication skills. When our kids are not focused on grammar all the time, on monitoring themselves, all of a sudden they can actually communicate. So, I would like to give you guys a 1-minute brain break. I threw a lot of info at you right there. Just breathe for a minute and we'll come back. Okay, we're back. I'm sorry, I know a minute is really short, but I'm hoping it gave you a little bit of processing time. We are going to move back into this and start immediately with a discussion amongst you guys. So, moving into this third part, components of good comprehensible input, I would love just for 3 minutes, again, discuss with the people around you what qualities of a material make good CI. What are you looking for when you pick something or when you create something to make it good comprehensible input? Try to think of 4 qualities. And yeah, 3 minutes, go ahead.
Some of the textbooks, some of the model dialogues, you'll see that they're like, that's correct. So nobody would really say that. Like, this situation would really never happen. So, it should be something like this.
All right. Thank you, guys. So I heard a lot of, well, correct answers just walking around, which is fantastic, but not surprising to me. You're all professional English teachers, so you all have an intuitive feel and understanding for what is necessary. But the four that I'm going to focus on today are these. Comprehensible. Duh. We want things to be understandable, interesting or relevant, not focused on grammar structures, very controversial in Japan, I know, and safe. So let's look at each of these in a little bit more detail. So the first of these, comprehensible. Obviously, we want this material to be understood in our classrooms, about 95% without effort, okay? This is a passage from a book that I read a few years ago. The highlighted words are that extra 5% that they don't know. It's a lot less than you think it is. Typically in a textbook, we see like 12 or 13 vocabulary words being introduced for a shorter passage than this. It's too much. The students can't process it. It's just too difficult, and we don't want things to be too difficult for them. They will shut down. And another part of comprehensibility is natural English, okay? If it is not natural, it is not good input. That is why textbooks are not considered good comprehensible input. They're unnatural English. Every single ALT in this room can say, my textbook sucks, it's weird. Like, why does it say that? I would never say that. And JTEs, if you ever have read a Japanese language textbook, you go, why are they saying that? Why do they always introduce themselves, watashi wa? Right? We don't say that. So if it's not actually natural, we're kind of failing our students because we're teaching them a way to communicate that is not appropriate for real life situations, meaning they're not going to be effective communicators. So when we're looking for materials, we should be doing our best to find natural input that is easily accessible to our students, about 95%. Obviously, each of us have many kids in our classroom. You have 42 kids in your classroom. They're not all at the same level. It's really hard to actually find something that all of our students can understand. So how do we fix that? We just try our best, right? That's really all we can do. Make a rough estimate and supplement when needed. I wish there was more to say on that, but that's kind of it. So when things are not comprehensible, when language is too difficult, we know that the cognitive load becomes too high, right? Which means that it's difficult for our learners to process and remember new language structures because too much effort is spent understanding the meaning. So if we do want our kids to be getting some new vocabulary and some new grammar, they just can't do it because they can't even understand the basics of the text. We need that 95%. That's the number we need to be aiming for almost every time. Now, the truth is, there are some people who will tell you 98%. I think it's a little too high. We're undervaluing our students at that point. But, you know, there is discussion. So, some common techniques. These are things that you probably already do every single day in your classroom. When you're speaking, we speak with a slow speed, clear pronunciation. We have long pauses to allow for processing time, right? Of course, we use common words, no idioms, no slang, shorter sentences, and of course, using gestures, photos, and props to provide context. These are really simple ways to make speaking or watching things more comprehensible. You do this every day, I'm sure. But I want to reframe this process. This is not about dumbing down our language. It's about making the message accessible to the kids. We're not simply simplifying, we are making what we say understandable. It's a small difference, but an important one for us as teachers. Maybe something you don't do is techniques when reading. So, giving chapter or article summaries, right? Short little blurbs to get the kids thinking and interested. Highlighting difficult words and defining them, not translating them. There is a time and a place for translation. But for comprehensible input, it's a really good idea to just define the words in English, so the kids have to try and make connections themselves, making them an active part in their learning process. Using photos, easy one, right? Activating our prior knowledge before reading. I'm not just gonna give the kids a text, we're gonna talk about the topic. Hey, you guys like soccer? I honestly don't know anything about soccer, but a lot of people love soccer, so talk to the kids about soccer before they read the article. Make them think about it first. And last one, when possible, use audio. Using a multi-method is really good for making things understandable to our students. So a lot of us do that in class when we have the kids read a textbook as we read it out loud. But it's great to do that with a lot of things. Makes things a lot more easy to understand. We're building connections between pronunciation and the words on the page. Fantastic. Number 2, interesting and relevant. This seems simple, right? But in the same way that we have 42 kids with different levels, we have 42 kids with different interests in our classes. So creating and finding materials and topics that are interesting to all of them is really hard. Again, we do our best to roughly gauge what our class is interested in and try to cover a variety of topics so that everyone at least sometime is interested in it. The best input is so interesting that our students forget it's in English because they are so focused on the message, so focused on the content, they're not thinking about their English. This is the ultimate goal when we're learning English, when we're teaching our classes. It's really hard to accomplish. I think I've done it like twice in my entire English teaching career. But the goal is to get as close as possible, have our kids focus on the message, on that content that they actually care about, and move on. So studies show that students understand 25% more of a foreign language when they are already familiar with the content. And most people are interested in things that they're familiar with, right? And I'm not talking familiar like, let's talk about what's in the classroom today. I mean things that they are genuinely have a prior interest in, right? We want them to be learning about things that they have something to say about in Japanese. They have nothing to say in English that they don't have to say in Japanese. If they have nothing to say in Japanese, they're gonna have nothing to say in English. That's why introducing topics like, for example, in one of my textbooks, universal design for junior high school students is useless, right? They don't care at all. Like, why do they care that these scissors are made slightly different? That's not useful to them. It's not relevant to their lives. Maybe it's an important topic for them to be learning about. Why is it in the English class? They're not going to be using that to communicate with people in daily situation. So, some interesting materials, right? These are all things that we know we can use, but we don't often actually bring into the classroom. So, manga, our kids love manga. How many manga are translated into English? Bring the English manga so that they can read it. For your younger students, picture books, obviously. I do recommend anything by this author, John Klassen. My elementary, junior, and senior high students love these books. They're really cute and very funny. Anything, obviously, actual news sources. They know what's going on in the world. Talk to them about it. Yeah, it's pretty easy to make things interesting for them, but we don't often try, or we have to focus on the textbook instead. So I would encourage you to bring more of it into your classrooms. So, controversial one in Japanese, in the Japanese environment, is not focused on grammar structures. If we focus on grammar, we are not focusing on communication, plain and simple. We do not want to have any explicit grammar rules in our comprehensible input. Grammar rules have a place in the English classroom, not when we are doing this, not when our focus is comprehensive input. We want to learn our structures, again, through exposure and context, rather than telling you exactly what's happening every time. And again, just repeating what I said before, it matches real world communication. Here are some of the negatives of grammar focus. There's a lot, I've just chosen to focus on a few. So, the first one is it reduces the quality of comprehensible input and communication. Because I, as a teacher, all of you as a teacher, we become concerned with how we are speaking. I am trying to include X structure so many times in my sentence. I'm not speaking naturally to the kids. How many times have you been asked, or in a class, said, can you make 8 sentences using ing in this one paragraph? I can, I shouldn't, right? No one speaks like that. So we're teaching our kids this unnatural speech. It reduces actual communication because the kids think that you have to be using this every single time in this way. Doesn't help them. And of course, the same is true for reading selections, right? We're choosing reading selections based on how many examples of grammar or vocabulary are in the text, not on the message. And we want the message to be the focus, the communication to be the focus. Fantastic. Final one is safe. I've chosen a really simple word here, but basically this concept is materials should not make students feel defensive, nervous, or scared. They should not feel as if they are being tested at all times. A lot of materials make students immediately terrified. We cannot be doing that to our kids. We know that when we're anxious, when we're nervous, we don't process things properly. We immediately forget them. How many times have you been nervous in a situation, walked out of the room and gone, oh, I don't remember a single thing that was just said to me. That's exactly what happens to our students in all of our English classes when we do not choose materials that are approachable to them, accessible, safe. So, how can we lower defensiveness for our kids? Well, first one, we use the 3 first points of comprehensible input. When things are easily understandable, interesting to students, and they're not focused on grammar structures, and they're just focused on communicating, that filter, that nervousness immediately drops. And they're more receptive to everything else that we're going to be telling them, right? And it's fair, right? When I can understand things, I'm not as scared, right? It's pretty simple. Another way, don't force production or output too early. So output, I'm defining as the opposite of input, of course, so speaking or writing, right? They are a necessary part of language learning, but they should not be forced. We have to allow our students processing time. For some kids, they're gonna wanna speak immediately. Great, encourage that. But we shouldn't be forcing kids to speak. I've been here 5 years. I've seen hundreds of times JTEs, I love you deeply. But something that's really common in a Japanese classroom is saying, you, stand up, answer the question. Oh my God, that's terrifying. Like, I would cry as a student. So we cannot be doing this to our kids. There are studies across languages that show students who are learning a second language, it's actually completely normal for them to be silent for months before they produce for the first time. That's not viable in a classroom environment, I know. We have to have them produce sooner than months in. I know that. But we should be allowing the students 5 minutes, 10 minutes to the end of the week before we're forcing them to speak. Right? That's how we can lower some of the nervousness. And the last one, when speaking, don't correct every mistake. I would argue don't correct every mistake in writing as well, but that's a different subject. So, only correct mistakes that impede meaning. Because our focus is on communication, if their message is understandable to me, they've succeeded in the goal. I'm not going to tell them that they're wrong. All I'm going to do is rephrase their simple errors without acknowledging them. You all do this in your class every single day. Try to do it more. Make sure that it's a conscious process when you're doing it. You know, your parents did it with you when you were kids. It's the same way that we learn our first language. I'm exciting. Oh, you're so excited? That's great. Exact same process with our students. Yeah. So, again, I just threw another huge amount of information at you. breathe. Take a moment. Okay, thank you everyone. Bring it back in. We are almost finished. You can have lunch soon. So I would love to go through one case study together. It's this one right here. If you cannot see this, please scan this QR code at the bottom. You can get this image on your phone to look at it in clearer detail. But this is a dialogue from a textbook that I use all the time in my classes. New Horizon. It's a junior high school level textbook. With the people around you, please basically grade this textbook as comprehensible input. So using all the things that we've talked about already, basically go through the list. Is it comprehensible, interesting, focused on grammar, safe? Consistent is an interesting one. You don't have to talk about that one if you don't want. But kind of go through those top 4, grade it. See what's wrong with it. I'll give you guys like 4 minutes with people around you. Go ahead. Okay, awesome. So let's kind of go over some of the qualities here that are useful or not useful for our students. So, comprehensible. Well, yeah, it is comprehensible. The students can understand the text. We've succeeded mostly on the first one. About 95% is easily understood. They have vocabulary if they need it too. However, and I heard all of you mention this, it is so unnatural. No one would ever say, "Look over here. Oh my God, who am I?" No. We would never say that. It's so strange. We've failed in this communicative aspect, right? We're teaching our kids things that are not useful in their daily lives. On that note, interesting or relevant. It's not interesting to students and it's not relevant to their daily lives. I don't mean to say this isn't an important topic. It is. Universal design is interesting. Why is it in my English classroom? Right? They don't need to talk about this in English. It is useless to them. This text talks about castanets. Bruh, I'm a native English speaker. I think I've talked about castanets once in my life. Our students do not need to know this word. Do not use it in this text, right? Now, of course, it is focused on grammar structures, right? So it has this unnatural sentences because of the focus on the grammar structures. We're forcing the grammar into this scenario. We're not being natural. There's no actual message, no real communication happening on the page. And safe. Well, it doesn't follow the first three elements of CI, so it's not inherently safe or easy for our kids to digest, and it does not lower defensiveness, right? They're going to feel nervous. That's just how it is. I asked my kids when we did this recently, do you care about this? Is this interesting for you? How do you feel when you read this? They were like, I do not care, it's boring, and it makes me feel anxious. Oh my gosh, we've completely ruined our students' experience. The sad thing is, we live in Japan. Living in Japan is a great thing, sorry. Sorry, no, we live in Japan, it's a good thing. But we live in Japan, meaning we have to be using textbooks, right? It is a sad thing, it's an important part of our jobs. So, what can we do for this textbook to make it better input for our students? What can we do to make it more accessible for them? I'm just gonna give you like a 2 minutes quick talk with your group. Before I give you my answer for this situation, I'm curious if anybody in the audience would like to share any of their ideas. If you don't want to, that's totally cool. I will not force you. See, look, I'm being a good teacher. Talia, do you want a mic?
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. I'll try to be good though. What I thought about, actually similarly, in the 5th grade textbook right now in New Horizons, there's a unit that is called Where Is It From? Similarly, kind of odd, but it does have it helps the students think about where things come from. For example, one of my teachers said like to maybe, to be fair, I am not very familiar with this unit, I must preface that, I apologize. But I think one thing that would be good, if we're doing universal design, we would give the students an opportunity to discover things that actually have it, and they can share it in that way. And maybe change the grammar to, this helps do this, or something like that. So it gives a chance, the kids a chance to discover, and they can also put into words in English of why this universal design thing is helpful or relevant to them. So I think that would make it a little bit better. I'm not familiar with this, so if they do already have it.
No, it's perfect. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share? Oh yeah, big round of applause. Anyone else have anything? Yeah. Do you want the mic?
Hello. Yeah, so I actually just did this lesson this week, and it was very confronting. I was like, what? This is crazy. And while this class was happening, there were 2 students that had broken their legs. They had a hand, and I was like, this is what we should be focusing on. What are they using to get around the class? What do they find they can't do? And everyone probably has an experience of spraining their ankle or, hurting an elbow or something. And I was like, that's what we're going to do. So I think I've talked to the teachers, and we're trying to do that next week. Maybe try and focus on the students' experience and get them to retell their moment of memory, and then they can discover universal design. I was like, yeah.
Fantastic. I love you all, and I'm sure you all have opinions, but I'm going to give you mine. So, what can we do to make this better input for our students? Well, the first one is we can not focus on the grammar, right? So both Talia and Alina, they brought up focusing on the student's lived experience rather than the grammar that's on the page. Every single one of us knows this is strange. We don't talk like this in English. Move away from the grammar that's on the page. Focus on the message. Talk about the student's real lived experience. Make it relevant to them. Don't focus on the form, focus on the message. Other things we can do, we can use reading strategies, right? So we can activate their prior knowledge, give them short summaries, and define vocabulary words instead of translating them for them, right? This lowers their defensiveness, makes them active participants in their learning, and it makes things more comprehensible for them. In fact, I would say cover up the vocabulary list on the side and just give definitions for words when they have questions. Ask them to ask you questions when they don't know what's going on. Active participation in this communication. If you have time, rewrite the passage to be more natural. I cannot even explain to you how many Google Docs I have of rewritten textbooks. I have the time to do it, so I'm fine doing it. I know a lot of people don't, but if you do have the time, I do recommend rewriting passages using the same grammar if your teachers require it to make things actually real English. And finally, like both Alina and Talia said, use it as a springboard to more interesting readings and presentations, right? Do not make this the focus of your lesson, make it the warm-up, okay? We move on from this in 10 minutes, and then we're done, okay? So much easier when we do it like this. We're still using the textbook, so hey BOE, we did our job. But beyond that, obviously. So, I think we have 3 minutes left, which is perfect. Just some final tips for you guys that I'm going to give about finding and creating resources. Obviously, everything I've said up to this point is tips, but a few final ones I want to reiterate. When we're finding materials, we're going to be looking for things with a lot of context clues and visuals, okay? Obviously, if your kids are at the level that they're reading novels, those are not going to have context clues that are visual. They're going to have the entire rest of the book. And honestly, if your kids are that high, that's amazing. Number 2, repetition. So we want to be using similar but different contexts, okay? We're creating consistent communication with our students, but if I'm changing the context too much, it's going to become too confusing. So try to find some similar contexts. And of course, copies or simply is real-world daily input. News, stories, social media, things that they can interact with. This is for finding materials. For creating materials, making them. Of course, include a mixture of complex and simple grammar scaled to your students' level. Okay? okay? Do not shy away from making things a little more complicated. We're already wanting to be a little above our students' level anyway. If they don't understand, you can explain it to them. It's okay. They're not babies, okay? They are human beings who are in school to learn. We should treat them as such. And if we're including a mixture of complex and simple, our higher level students are still going to feel challenged, and our lower level students are still going to have simple grammar that they can understand and not become discouraged. We want to be kind of targeting everyone. Use a lot of core vocabulary. I haven't mentioned core vocabulary today, but basically it's about the 600 most commonly used words in a language. Try to use a lot of those. Speak and write naturally. Don't change how you usually speak to force grammar and vocabulary. And of course, attach drawings, images, and gestures if you're speaking. So here, this is a 3-page document of resources I've compiled for you guys, divided by target age, that hopefully will be helpful to you at some point in the future. They're a great starting point for comprehensible input for your classrooms, and I hope that you will use them. Yeah. So that is the end of my presentation. I hope it was useful to you in some way, and thank you all very much. If you have any questions, please feel free to come ask me during lunch. Yeah.